A little over a week ago, I had the Malibu down at XRP in Texas doing some testing on radials. And although I set a new personal best on one kit at 621 at 110, the Malibu's transmission simply would not hold up to the second kit. But for this weekend, it's not going to matter. At least that's what I thought. I had planned on taking the car to Cincy Street Nights to run index with it, which would only require turning on one kit late in the run. But due to the weather forecast in Cincinnati on Friday, Vicky told us Billy and Tommy have decided to go to SLUG Fest in Kentucky. So Jimmy Dale and I jumped in the 64 and we started headed up to Vickers Performance Transmissions in Alliance to pick up my new and improved 700R4. On the way up, we decided to stop at Uncle Bob's and check in on the progress on Jimmy Dale's small block. Bob's already gotten started working on the cylinder heads as well as boring and honing the block. And Jimmy Dale's new trick flow intake is already here. You can clearly see the difference between it and his old Edelbrock manifold. Anyway, after a quick stop at Bob's, we jumped back in the 64 and we started headed up towards Alliance. On the way up there, I told Jimmy Dale how much Dion despises the 700R4 transmission in my Malibu, and he was reluctant to build me another one. Originally, the car started out with a mild 355, but now that it's got this 421 in it with two kits, Dion is pushing me more towards a Turbo 400 or a 4L80E. I told Jimmy Dale while we were at lunch, I'm going to tease Dion a little bit about putting this 700R4 in my car and make sure you film his facial expressions when I start in. This is my buddy Dion, owner of Vickers Performance Transmissions in Alliance, Ohio, right outside of Canton, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We just came past that on the way in. And Dion has built me a new and improved 700R4 capable of holding 1,200 horsepower.
Damn, that's a lie.
I was talking to him on the way up here, and I said, as soon as I say that, go right to his face, and Dion's going to go, no.
No. I'm thinking that second kid is where all the trouble comes.
That's where all the trouble comes from.
Yeah.
While Jimmy Dale and I are picking up that transmission up at Vickers, Jeremy and Kenny are back at the shop pulling the old 700R4 down out of the Malibu. By the time Jimmy Dale and I got back to the shop, they had the transmission out, and I asked Jeremy to go ahead and remove the governor as well as the cast aluminum TCI deep transmission pan so that we could reuse both on the new transmission. When we backed up to the shop, Jeremy opened the shop door and got busy swapping the transmission pan out right away. Unbelievably, when Jeremy took the other transmission apart to pull the governor and the pan, the drain plug didn't look as bad as I thought it would, but he did find a spring in the tail housing. Anyway, once we had the new transmission up in the car, Kenny helped me fill the transmission with fluid, and then we fired up the Malibu and ran it through the gears and rechecked the fluid level. We checked for leaks, and then it was finally time to set the car on the ground and take it out for its first test drive. As I backed the car out of the shop, June Pup was staring at me, wanting to go with me, and I couldn't tell her no. The transmission felt really good, but the car seems to be running out of fuel in high gear at wide open throttle. I figured maybe it might have been low on fuel, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. At this point, it's Thursday night, and we plan on being in Kentucky on Saturday. If I want to be able to race this car, I've only got so many hours left to find this problem. So I went for a little test drive, and the transmission seems to be okay. The tires rub. I put slicks on it, and they rub something terrible. But the biggest problem I got is for some reason it's running out of fuel about midway through second gear. As soon as I put it in high, it just literally dies. And so I checked the fuel filter, it's fine. I don't know, maybe the fuel pump's starting to go bad. It's a mechanical fuel pump. So I don't know if maybe that's what's wrong. But regardless, we're not gonna be able to race it this weekend the way it is. So it is what it is. Later that night after dinner, Billy and I came back to the shop and put the Malibu up on the lift to check out all the fuel lines and fittings and see if there was anything blatantly obvious that would cause a problem. Outside of a slightly crimped fuel line on the fuel pump next to the frame, we were struggling to find anything wrong. And while we were working on the Malibu, Jimmy was struggling to keep up with all of his merch orders he had coming in. We worked out there till about 2 o'clock in the morning and then got back up Friday and decided to try and make another pull on the Malibu. June Pup hopped in with me and we went for a little test drive, but unfortunately, the problem persisted, which led to another trip into Jegs to pick up a new fuel pump and a new fuel pressure gauge so I could at least monitor what the fuel pressure was at idle. I had a CO2 bottle topped off for the kids and then headed back home as quickly as I could in an attempt to get home and get this fuel pump installed and take the car out to test it hopefully before the rain comes. By the time I got back to the house, Jeremy and Kenny already had the old pump removed, and we were ready to swap the fittings out and put the new pump on. It was literally a race against time to get all this accomplished before it starts to rain and wipe out any opportunity to test this car before tomorrow morning. After a quick check for leaks, June Pup and I hop back in the car and we pull out of the shop, just as the weather starts to roll in. June Pup and I didn't even make it to the highway before I had to turn the wipers on. It's pretty clear I'm only going to get one opportunity at this, and I just hope to God this problem is resolved. Everyone back at the shop was patiently waiting to find out whether the Malibu was actually fixed. Based off that one pull that I made before the rain came in, I think the car is going to be okay. According to the air fuel monitor on the shifter, the AFR stayed consistent all the way through the pull. I feel pretty confident that the fuel system problem is taken care of, but there's no way to know whether the transmission will actually hold the power with both stages of the nitrous kit turned on. So that brings us to Saturday, and the dogs could tell as we were getting ready to leave, it was definitely race day. Their only concern for the day was getting to go. Billy's Nova is already loaded and tied down in the enclosed trailer, but we still need to load up the Falcon, the Malibu, and Rob's Grand Prix. I had just gone out and turned the lights on in the shop when Tommy pulled in the Falcon. I helped him get it up on the trailer, and then it was time to load the Malibu. Once we had those two on the trailer and tied down, it was time to load the Grand Prix on Jimmy Dale's little open trailer behind his Duramax. We had to use Billy and Tommy's ramp since Jimmy left his in Texas. It was a little sketchy, but we're thankful that Jimmy Dale was here to load it for us because nobody else really wanted to climb out the window. After a quick pit stop down to Flying J to top off the fuel tanks, we were all ready to hit the road. The dogs, of course, rode down with me and Vicky in my old dually. By the time we made it down to Cincinnati, they were pretty well zonked out in the back seat. We made it through downtown without any problems, crossed the Ohio River into Kentucky, and we managed to make it just south of Florence, Kentucky before we needed to make our first fuel stop. From there on, it was smooth sailing all the way down to the Mountain Parkway, which is my favorite part of the trip. The track we're headed to today is called Kentucky Dragway, and it's right off the Mountain Parkway in Clay City, Kentucky. Billy and Tommy have both raced here before, and Billy and I have actually even hosted an event at this track a few years ago called the Street Racers Reunion. So we're no strangers to the facility or the track surface. And the last time we were here, Tommy won the backside race on Friday night. Unfortunately, that event got rained out last night, so today we're just going to be running on the front side with both the Falcon and the Nova, and of course, my Malibu. The boys got all the cars unloaded and I fired up the Malibu to let it warm up while the crowd come over to check out Billy's Nova and the Falcon. I also got the bottle bath filled up with water and got a couple bottles warming up, and plenty of time to make the driver's meeting and to go out and check out the track surface, which they had just recently scraped.
There I was.
Kentucky Dragway, Clay City, Kentucky. We just unloaded the Malibu. We just put a tune-up in the Max 5. We're warming the bottle up. We're warming the engine transmission up right now. Just kind of getting everything situated. I got the standalone tank filled up with 110 race gas. I got plenty of fuel in the stock tank in the back. I think we're ready to go. The bottle's at 930 psi. I'm just going to go ahead and warm it up. I got the bottle bath over there warming up a couple more bottles for later, but the bottle in the trunk's already got the bottle heater turned on. NX bottle blankets wrapped around and keeping it warm, right?
Yeah.
I got my NX shirt on. I got my NX hat on. I'm NX out, right?
Yeah.
I got my boy NX right here with me.
Yeah. You guys want to talk nitrous and nitrous accessories?
It's getting warm in here, Jimmy. Oh, there we go. That's better.
It's impressive.
Welcome to my office.
Welcome to my office.
Finally, it was time for the driver's meeting, and I found myself standing face to face with a guy that's been trolling me on the internet for months. What's your name?
Bernie.
Oh, you're the guy.
You keep ignoring
You know why I keep ignoring you? Because you evidently want attention. And if I give attention to everybody that yips at me on the internet, I'd have a full-time job doing it.
Okay.
So you want me off the trailer?
Oh, yeah.
Locked.
Okay, how much extra?
Hey,
How much
all right,
extra?
all right.
How much
Yeah.
extra?
Well, how much extra you want to put on?
I don't know, 500.
Good.
500.
Hey.
Hey, come on, man. That's what we like right here.
That's how you get your action, son. You step up on the freaking property, not on the internet. This is Bernie the Internet Troll, who has called me out first round in Daily Driver in his Le Mans Daily Driver. Now, at first, when Bernie started making these posts on Facebook, I pretty much ignored him because I wasn't sure if he had both oars in the water.
Now this shit's funny. You get to see this from Wilkesboro, North Carolina, all the way back to Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky. It's going to play continuously from here to Lexington, Kentucky. Let me see where you can read it at. That shit's funny. I don't care who you are.
At first, Bernie seemed to be a little quirky and funny, but after I didn't accept his friend request, his posts got a little bit more demanding. And then he began asking whether or not my sponsors were getting a return on their investment. And of course, consistent with most trolls on the internet, he has a few little buddies that like to chime in their 2 cents every once in a while as well. Unfortunately for Bernie, I've dealt with people like him before. This isn't my first rodeo, dealing with some clown on Facebook. Now, I had already made up my mind weeks ago that Bernie was going to get his race, but obviously I'd rather have this go down when the car is better tested. All right, guys, so the boys are going first. They're running small tire first. Tommy's, I think, 5th pair, and Billy's 8th pair. And then they're running Daily Driver right after that, which is the class I'm in. This fellow over here has been yipping at me for months, just making a fool of himself on the internet. He called me out first round. I accepted. I don't give a shit. It's just one of those things where when you're in the position that I guess my family's in, it attracts people to just do stupid shit like that. And he's been woofing and woofing and woofing for months, telling me my car's a piece of shit, telling everybody I'm scared of him and all this shit. I've lost many races. I'll lose many more. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. I don't really care. Honestly, I don't even know if this damn thing is going to go down the track. We worked on the car all day yesterday. I think we've got all the bugs out of it. I haven't made a nitrous pass on this transmission. I have no idea whether it's going to hold it or not. I don't know. The transmission that was in the car, we had done a lot of stuff to that thing over the years, and I can't remember everything that we did to it, in all honesty. But I worked on the line pressure on that thing. I had the line pressure cranked way up, and I don't even know what the line pressure is on this one right now. But, you know, if it holds it, it should go down. If it doesn't hold it, it is what it is. The first class to race today is small tire, and Billy and Tommy are both entered. Tommy drew 5th pair left lane, and Billy drew 8th pair in the right. Now, although I'm thinking about my race, my first priority is to make sure my kids are safe. Tommy's driving the Falcon today, and the car left really good, but the car got extremely loose on the big end of the track, which made me very nervous for Billy's next pass. The Nova is much faster and capable of going a lot more mile an hour out the back, but it's also been having engine problems and is much more unpredictable. The Nova got extremely loose at the top end of the track, and although Billy won the round, it was still nerve-wracking. And now it's my turn to get in the car and be the first pair down in Daily Driver just moments after Billy nearly crashed his Nova. It was difficult for me to hold my composure as I was getting ready with all the shit this guy has talked on the internet. And judging by the way this guy's been acting for the last 6 months, if I don't win this round, I'll be listening to his bullshit on the internet for the rest of my life. I'm just praying that the fuel system problem is taken care of, and my prior experience with shock settings, accelerator pump tuning on carburetors, as well as my nitrous tuning experience will pull through for me here in this round. The Malibu was out front by almost 3 cars until I got loose at about 500 feet. I had to get out of the throttle for a quick second, but I managed to gather the car up and take the win. True to his word, Bernie did pay up the $500. However, I kind of refused to speak to him and just told him to go pay my wife instead. Jimmy Dale and I were studying his video when Vicky came up to hand me my $500. The shock settings looked almost perfect, and based off the nitrous ramps that I had set up, I'm not sure that the car could do any better in the first 60 feet. Looking back on the videos after I made this run, it's pretty evident that I needed to up the tire pressure and probably tighten the rear shock settings to make a better run on this pass here.
Well,
It's a fast car.
yeah.
That guy was really, really nice. I'm really busy today. Like, we got a lot going on and the kids are trying to kill themselves every pass. The guy walked up to me in the staging lanes. He said, "Hey, Bill." I said, I'm busy right now, buddy. I'm sorry. And he's like, no, you got me this next round. I'm like, okay. And so he was really, really nice. Really nice car, fast car. It's okay. I won first round. I won my grudge race against this lippy guy over here.
Yeah.
And I got my radials with me. We can throw the radials on tomorrow and go get breakfast and cruise around, and I'm good. All right, good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, and the kids are all at the Airbnb. Vicky and I stayed here in the trailer last night. We just got up and got showered. We're going to go get something to eat. Vicky's found a little restaurant uptown or something. She wants to go get a bite to eat before we load up and head home. I think the kids are still partially asleep back at the Airbnb. So we were going to wait on them, but they're too tired to get up, I guess. So we're going to go get something to eat. Now, if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say something about the fact that Vicky is terrible with directions. You would think that by now I would learn my lesson, but I still trusted her this morning to bring up directions to a restaurant just 2 miles down the road. However, our first stop for breakfast ended in confusion. The first restaurant turned out to be a Mexican place not open for breakfast. She thought for sure that we were in the wrong place, so she pointed to another spot down the street that turned out to be a mechanic shop and/or a car wash. Definitely not a restaurant. So she picked another restaurant that's about 5 miles away in the opposite direction. Strike two. That restaurant is actually a bank, also closed on Sunday. However, straight ahead is a for sure place to get something to eat.
What is this place? It's like an Arby's, a Long John Silver, an antique shop, and a food court all in one.
So instead of getting breakfast, we got Arby's roast beef sandwiches.
Never have I seen an antique Arby's. Till today.
So instead of eating out in the car in the parking lot, Vicky and I decided to take the Malibu and drive up to the Natural Bridge State Park, just a few miles up the mountain Parkway. Now, I've been there before. There's a sky lift that takes you up on top of the mountain, and there's a walking path to take you up to the Natural Bridge, which is literally on top of this mountain in the middle of nowhere. But of course, as our luck would have it, there's a problem. There's forest fires in the area, and the park is closed. So Vicky and I parked the Malibu in a parking lot for a campground across the street from the park and get out the drone. I've been waiting 3 or 4 years to take Vicky to this state park to show her this natural bridge, and I'll be damned if a forest fire is going to keep me from sharing it with her today. It took about 30 minutes and 3 drone batteries to find it, but eventually I got the shots that I was looking for. Even though we didn't get to take the sky lift up there and see it in person, at least the next time we come down, she'll know what to expect when we go up there. We didn't get to go to breakfast.
Nope.
We didn't even get to go to a restaurant.
Nope.
But we did get Arby's.
Yep.
I didn't get to show you the natural bridge.
Well, the drone footage is pretty cool. There's forest fires. What can you do?
Now, the closest thing I saw to a forest fire while we were down there were some landscapers burning mulch, but it's whatever. We got back to the track, loaded everything up, and I took the dogs out for a little walk before we got back in the truck for the 3.5-hour drive back home. All right, guys, so we're back home, and some things are going on here that were unexpected, right, Jimmy Dale?
Yeah, just rolling with the punches. That's all you can do.
Jimmy Dale's going to head home. We don't have his engine done yet, but there's some issues there. There's some issues back in Texas. I'll talk about them here in a little bit, but he's getting ready to head home. I'll get into all the details after Jimmy takes off.
Hey,
you want to say goodbye?
Tell him family first.
Family first.
Family first. You start there, and then the rest of the shit falls in place.
That's it right there.
But yeah, later, guys. See you soon.
Before we left for Kentucky, I got word that Bob had to be taken to the hospital because his heart went into AFib. Bob and LT both have heart conditions that they have to be careful with. And Bob's heart has gone into AFib 3 times in the last year and a half. Bob was given medication and sent back home. However, while we were in Kentucky, Saturday, he had to be taken back to the hospital a second time. Only this time, they had to shock him to get his heart back in rhythm. So I just got off the phone with Uncle Bob, and he's out of the hospital and he's back home. Thankfully, they were able to shock his heart this morning and put it back in rhythm. And it wasn't long after that they released him and sent him back home. Obviously, if you've watched the Street Racing Channel video that came out this morning or this afternoon, you know that the engine in the Nova is back out of it again. We took it apart, and I've called in a favor from a friend of mine to take some pressure off Bob, take some workload off Bob until he can get better. Jimmy Dale's engine's still up at Bob's, and we'll get back on that once Bob gets to feeling better. Bob is struggling. He's always had a heart condition. He struggled with it for years, and it's been reoccurring more frequently the last 2 or 3 years. He's also got a shoulder injury, an old shoulder injury that he's struggling with. And he's just not really, I don't know. I don't want to speak for Bob, but I'm not sure that Bob is in a condition to just keep working non-stop, wide open throttle every day like he has for years and years. He owns a farm, and he farmed for years before the machine shop business. And he still owns the farm. He leases it out, and he does the machine shop work now. And I just don't know that Bob's going to be able to continue to work like he has. It's getting to be too much on him. So I've offered some assistance to Bob, and there's some things that I think that we're capable of doing together that would allow him to slow down and enjoy his time with his wife and his daughter and his family, and travel a little bit and relax. Obviously, you guys have seen we're doing a giveaway for my Mustang on Street Racing Channel's website, and I told Bob there's no reason why we can't do the same thing on my channel, and maybe do engines. The engine in my Malibu fits a lot of different applications. It's a really good combination. It's a low maintenance, 600 lift hydraulic roller cam, and it's got plenty of vacuum to operate power brakes. And my God, at 3,800 pounds, it goes 660s through an overdrive transmission. So, there's things that we can do, maybe even build some LS engines. Bob's been wanting to do that, and he just recently purchased a bunch of stuff to update his dyno so that he could run fuel injection and do a whole lot of other things. So there's some things coming up with Bob that I may be involved with if he decides to do that and try to slow down a little bit, but we'll see how things go. In other news, Jimmy Dale's wife's grandmother is not doing well, and she's in the hospital with some health complications, and Jimmy Dale wanted to get home and be with his family, be with his wife and her grandmother. I understand they're a pretty tight family, and so Jimmy wanted to get home. So anyway, guys, that's what's going on here. Jimmy Dale's already on his way home. The boys are out here working on my Mustang, doing some work to it. Billy was concerned that it may have a head gasket that has been leaking ever since the day we brought it home, and I think he was right. It looked, they've got the heads off of it out there. They're working on it. That'll be in a video tomorrow. But they're working on the Mustang out there. We've got a plan in place to get the big block fixed, and we're kind of in a holding pattern for right now as far as engine projects until Bob gets to feeling better, and that's okay. Jimmy Dale's on his way home to go be with his family and get some things taken care of back home, and we're going to help Bob get back together here and do what we do. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you for watching.